If you don't know, yesterday morning, some Cuban American congressman went on live television in English and Spanish, said that the United States is about to indict Fidel Castro for the murder of four individuals, civilians, three Americans, one resident in the United States, that all they were doing is out there. They weren't looking for other aircraft. They were looking for survivals in life rafts trying to get away from Castro's Cuba. When Raul, in charge of the military since that he's been since the original takeover, sent two MiGs after him. The one piece of information that didn't come out until today was that the fact that both of the aircraft that were shut down were retreating and diving out of the way to get out of there. Okay. No. They never entered Cuban airspace. Now, the reason I think this is interesting is today that indictment was done. Today also, the USS Nimitz carrier group entered the Caribbean. And there's an amphibious ship that I thought might be going to Iran to back up the Tripoli and the Boxer. That's in Southern California. That can probably be in Cuba by this time next week because of the Panama Canal. And it's the size of the Boxer, so it's not a small one. It can carry another 5,000 troopers if Jeffrey can confirm on that. The Maitland Island is a ship. And before, I would say that there's no blockade on Cuba because it was sanctions. Sanctions and a hard blockade, two different things. Now, with an aircraft carrier there, the size of Nimitz, there is a blockade on Cuba, period. Okay? And frankly, the people that were telling me, oh, there's U.S. Coast Guard cutters, whatever. I mean, literally, whatever. They're not much of anything, you know? They're good for patrolling the coast. That's it. Cuba has way too much coast that they could not have patrolled. I think something's up. I have noticed that Rubio is talking about Iran, but he's talking more about Cuba. So I'm just wondering if this is going to be a Maduro or a full all-out invasion. And there's enough Cuban people that are pissed off enough that it could very well be a Maduro type raid. I don't know for sure or not. That's me guessing. I did get some other information. Remember a week or so ago, I told you guys that Raul Castro had power on his enclave and his neighbors came out and the military had to go save him. The neighbors found out because they were listening to Radio Free Cuba out of Miami, and they had gotten enough calls that was happening in Miramar, Cuba, that they ratted on him, and the people listening on the radio decided to pay him a visit. So there is an issue, and I think this regime will fall. I was thinking Iran would fall first, but now I'm not too sure. So we got two locations in the world where shit's happening. That's all I have for you guys.
Wow. So actually, let me thank you so much for bringing this to our attention because this is big. So this is a major historic escalation. The U.S. Department of Justice indicted 94-year-old. Oh my God, he's old. Raul Castro on severe federal criminal charges. So, what are the charges? On May 20th, 2026, a federal court in Miami unsealed an indictment charging Castro and 5 other Cuban officials with conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals, 4 counts of murder, and 2 counts of destruction of aircraft. So, this was in something that they did in 1996. And this might be the legal justification for what they need to go and get these people out of Cuba, like you're like Maduro style, like you say, or maybe just do a complete, invasion, or I don't know, We don't. I mean, Jose would know a lot more about this. We're just learning about this. So, which one, Jose? Just which one is more likely? I know you said both of them are on the table, but which one
I think
is more?
I think it's going to depend because is it a real? It's a real indictment, but is it just another as well? Another um, pointing because the U.S. government, especially the CIA, is negotiating with Raul and his grandsons, and many feel that the grandson's actually running the island, not the white-haired dude or Raul himself because of his age. Okay, they're negotiating with them to give up and go in exile. This might just be another. You go in exile, you go to jail and join Maduro. You know, 5,000 Marines fully armed. It depends how many Cuban militaries are in other countries in the Caribbean exporting socialism. Someone
So,
mentioned before we started talking that Nicaragua might be a target. Colombia is definitely a target. So it all depends. I mean, I have incomplete information on a lot of stuff. I just know what was in the news in the last couple of days that triggered today me saying I got to talk about this and let everybody know shit's hitting the fan.
so here are the few points that might help us get a closer. For us who are not following it as close as Jose, might get a better understanding of how close we are to escalation. So, President Trump himself has said that he won't do an escalation. It won't be an escalation because Cuban regime is already falling apart on its own. But we do also have the acting general Todd Blanche, I think I'm pronouncing it right, warned that if Castro does not surrender willingly, he may be brought to the US by another way. This is widely viewed as a threat of military extraction, mirroring the recent US military operation that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro earlier this year. And then we also have military buildup. The U.S. military has moved the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz. Is that how you
Nimitz.
pronounce it?
Is that
Nimitz?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And its escort warships into the southern Caribbean Sea. And Cuban president warned that any U.S. military action would result in a bloodbath. Where have I heard that before? And citizens in Havana are bracing for the serious possibility of targeted U.S. military strikes. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for bringing that up to our attention, Jose.
And just as a point, the Nimitz was in operations with Argentinian forces in South America and South Atlantic, and it came from there. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of destroyers or frigates come out of Jacksonville Naval Base to join it. Yeah, exactly, Jeffrey. Because and as far as the Maitland getting there, there's another ship that they named that I cannot find in the registrar. I don't know if it's a supply ship or something else, but it might be bigger than what originally went over to Iran.
Wow. Holy crap. Okay, let's get to the responses. People wanted to talk about this.
Yes, those are five. These are the people: Raúl Modesto Castro, Lorenzo Alberto Pérez Pérez, Emilio José Palacio Blanco, José Fidel Gual Balzaga, Raúl Simanca Caldena, Luis Raúl González, Padre Rodríguez. I don't know which one of these.
Wait, Sketch, I know you just said that because you wanted to show off how good you pronounce those. I think that's
It's
that's
a very
the reason.
sexy accent.
Yes,
You know.
it is very sexy. But I know what you
But
did
there
there.
are additional charges that are about additional people that are related to drug trafficking and terrorism, right? There are 1982 Miami federal indictment of 14 people, including Cuban officials, for conspiring to move. Let me see some of the Cuban officials' name: René Rodríguez Cruz, Aldo Santa Maria Cuadrado. I'm just not going to read the names because
Yeah, don't.
you got me. You caught me. but there is also terrorism stuff that's related. So it's not just one case being built; is a couple of cases, and you got to remember. Yes, we're making the legal case for our action, but usually when you make this legal cases, what do? That gives you permission to investigate.
Fact.
It gives you permission to look at their phones. It gives you permission to look at their communications, their internet, their emails. It gives you permission to start spying on them using the planes. I mean, we were probably doing that already, but it lets us do it in the open, right? So any communication, any things that if we were suspecting that they're exporting socialism, that they're exporting soldiers, trying to import them back,
Yeah.
all that kind of the drugs that they're bringing stuff up that it's easier to do by water than by land, all that stuff that we're suspecting, and maybe we were already investigating kind of like in the background. Now we can bring it to the forefront and include it in the charges. So I think we're making very much the legal case to go, because usually along when you make the legal case, you start bringing up the evidence.
Yeah.
And that's what should scare them, because we went after Maduro, but first we made the legal case so that we could show the evidence and then say, hey, this is what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing, and why it's legal.
Yeah.
Would they do a Maduro thing? I mean, if you remove them, what's left? I don't know. I don't
Okay, I
know
can
that
answer
there's
that. I
enough
can answer
government
that.
left. I
I
would
can
have
an-
Jose tell me.
Yeah, I can answer that. It'll be the current guy with the white hair, who's the Communist Party chief, who has been had to be, shall we say, bodyguarded whenever he goes out. Before he could walk out in Cuba, the people loved him. You know, not anymore. Not anymore. There's a distinct hatred to the regime and to communism in general. They're sick of it. They want to try something different. Whether that helps the United States do a Maduro, I don't know. I wouldn't worry too much. Well, I'll put it to you this way: there was 2,000 Cubans protecting Maduro. Not a single Venezuelan was protecting the man. They were the best of the best Cuba had to offer, supposedly. Okay, 30 of them died. No Americans died. Okay, the rest came home in shame. Okay, I don't know how good the Cuban army is. I don't know how often they're employed as anything other than bodyguards. So I don't know which way it's going to go, but it's going to go. And oh, by the way, Americans, when they hear Americans murdered and the charges are murder, that makes it a little harder to go against Trump.
So guys, we need to actually get through the responses faster, because we have also other topics and we have running out of time fast. So the next responses, let's just do boom, 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 and then as short as possible. Okay, who's next?
And I'll be as quick as possible. Yeah, I agree with what Sketch said. The thing is, I think it will be a Maduro-style operation. The thing is, I wonder how Guantanamo Bay is going to come into play onto this. Jose saying no, but I think they'll have to put on high alert. I think they might use it, but Havana's closer to the mainland than to Guantanamo Bay. So yeah, that's my concern, question, all that.
Okay,
Jeffrey?
This is actually in some ways tied to the Mueller regime. So, to make it quick, the strategic pause in the Middle East isn't isolated. It's giving the United States time to line up efforts, because our adversaries amongst the autocratic bloc are coordinating their efforts to try and stretch U.S. force projection. Right? It doesn't mean a lot of the things that I'm seeing shows all the planning, like U.S. Southern Command planning is active in the past 2 weeks. They've already convened formal planning sessions, potential military. It's all done. Force posture and reconnaissance has been surging off the coast of Cuba. Economic pressure is already there. It doesn't mean that the strike is like now. It definitely means, though, the window is closing fast, and we've set up all our ducks in a row to do just that. Understand it was also reported that the Castro regime that's illegally occupied Cuba since, I don't know, 57, 9, has gotten, hundreds of long-range drones from the Mullah regime remnants, Russia, and in some cases the Chinese Communist Party, to illustrate how they're coordinating their efforts. All that to say, those that are, concerned about the strategic pause in the Middle East, don't be. It just means that we're pivoting to offset or in response to what the enemies are doing.
By the way, just quickly before we go to the next topic, I just saw the reports that show the vast majority of Cubans today reject the ideology of communism. Not just the regime, but communism as a whole, the vast majority, which is a really great progress in Cuba. Amazing. And also just really quickly, as we got a super chat saying first time super chatting. Well, thank you, Ian Smith, with your first super chat. Really appreciate that. Thank you for your support. By the way, guys, this shows that people who experience Islam in power end up hating Islam, and people who experience communism in power end up hating communism.